right, everybody. We've got actually two very special guests for y'all this week. Everybody, please welcome to the show Bev Johnson and Marguerite Bennett. Welcome.
Hey,
Thanks for having us.
Marguerite, your background is pretty wild and
Oh,
awesome. So,
I it should be decorated for summer by now. It's still decorated for Easter because I've just been underwater with work. But
oh,
yeah,
okay, yeah, there was a lot going on there, but now I see the Easter Bunny ears and stuff. Okay, that's pretty awesome.
cheers.
Um, yeah, thanks for both of you for showing up today. Really appreciate it. And we're here to talk about a book that Chris and I wouldn't normally read. We wouldn't really pick off the shelf. I'm not, in general, I'm not a huge Flash Gordon fan, and this all ages book, Flash Gordon, the girl from Infinity, uh, is it's coming out, and we both read it. And I will say, I'm not just saying it because you're both here, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. And we're gonna talk about the art and stuff too. But Bev, your art was absolutely fantastic on the book.
Thank
I
you.
I really liked that like I don't know how to describe art. I'm not an artist, but I would say like a like poppy. I don't know. Like is that a good way to describe it, or like I don't know. How would you say you approached the book with the art? Because I just think it was like I don't know. It just fits so well with the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was just thinking of what I would like as around like a 12-year-old,
Hmm.
and trying to bring that kind of sensibility into it. I guess the style I was sort of inspired by Avatar: The Last Airbender a little bit.
Okay. I was gonna say it's almost like a animated like Saturday morning cartoon style. Not not direct to that, but I'd say it had that feel to it, which I think kind of flowed with the story. Um, and Marguerite, for you, like, how did you get involved writing this story? Was like Flash Gordon something you wanted to do, or was it?
They called me out of the blue. They'd actually heard me on a panel somewhere. I think somebody told me and
Okay.
thought that I would be a good fit. And it was back in 2019 in the before times. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and I
Okay.
was hanging out. I was with Ryan North and Chip Zdarsky. We were hanging out at like a cottage on the lake,
Uh huh.
and they called me out of the blue. And it was like, all right, because I've never done something all ages. Folk come to my,
Hmm.
my booth at conventions, and they, I'm one of a, it's a larger number now, but back in
Right.
the day, a handful of female writers,
Hmm.
and there was sort of an expectation that I would, have an abundance of all ages literature, and I really do not.
Okay. Yeah.
Almost
Yeah.
all of my stuff is pretty, R-rated and for mature. My
Yeah.
first creator own book was Insects.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
You know, and but it was really something, where it was like, oh wow, this is the opportunity to do something, that other folk have vouched that they thought that I would be good at, or good for, and let me give my absolute best effort. And at the time, like, my nieces and nephews weren't old enough, but like through the the writing of it and the pandemic and the illustrating and the finally it coming out, they are now old enough to enjoy it. And so that, has really transformed my relationship with it in a lot of ways. It's different when it's like, oh, this will be read by children and this will
Right.
be read by my nieces and nephews.
Yeah. It has a little more weight to it for you. You're
Oh,
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I'm gonna have to see them regularly. You bring up a good point because I mean, we've talked about a lot of creators that kind of bounce. I think there's one we've talked to that was like would bounce between horror books and then go to like all ages style, and and when I read the book, I mean, yeah, it is for sure. It's all ages. It's a lot of stuff's directed towards kids, but like the story still flows, and it's not like I would say it's not like shoved in your face, like oh, this is just for children. Is it like hard to get to that point when you're writing it? Is it like you got to put up
No,
like
like
guardrails or something?
well, and sorry for Bev because she's going to hear me give the same answers. But
That's okay.
like, but no, I really wanted the book that I wish that I'd had when I was like 11 or 12, and so it was
Hmm.
like I wanted an adventure story with all the boring parts cut out. I was so sick, of that sort of like boulderizing or, like now we're gonna take a side thing to talk about what good little children do. And it was like, okay, what if we just like let it rip nonstop, action and excitement and sweeping romance and space opera drama, and that was what I was going for. Like, I don't know if y'all ever read Peter Pan, but
Hmm.
they got the map of Neverland and how it's like, all the boring parts have been cut out. So it's like, here's the pirate ship, and here's the lagoon, and here's the volcano, and like,
Yeah,
so
right.
it's all the good stuff. And that was really what I wanted, and that was what, if this was my one chance to write something all ages, that was what I wanted to bring.
Yeah. And that was one of the fun parts of the book for me. And I'll let Chris talk about the book in a second, but all the different areas you go to, and I'm a big fan of fantasy in general, whether it's comic books, novels, shows, whatever. But I think that was a really fun part of the book, was getting to go to those different areas. And like for you, Bev, did you have a lot of creative freedom to kind of develop those places? Did you guys like interact back and forth a lot with that, or could you just kind of do your own thing?
I think the script descriptions were very helpful, and I had a lot of fun. I think just yeah, I think I went into it with the same philosophy of just like, let's make it as fun and fantastical as I
Hmm.
can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like you said, Marguerite, getting to go to each individual, like the action doesn't stop, the adventure doesn't stop, right? You get to go to in between all these places, and you're like, oh, this I wanted to like, when you're done with the book, you want to know more or like see other places, right? The way you approached it.
Cheers.
Um, I do want to. I don't know how much we can spoil about the book, but you know, this Flash Gordon story isn't the. I mean, I'm not a big Flash Gordon fan, but it's not something that I've seen in the past with the original Flash Gordon, and it does have like infinity in the name, and there is some references to a multiverse of some sort. Can we talk about that at all? Is that like a big thing in the Flash Gordon universe, or?
I mean, when you're coming into, a legacy story like this, that's
Hmm.
been around for almost 100 years, I, as a fan, get my nose sort of out of joint, when people come in and decide, oh, okay, I was just hired for this gig and I'm going to change everything about it. And this is
Yeah.
going to be the new, cool,
Yeah.
gritty, reboot, redo,
Hmm.
whatever. And so I really do think, that if I'm essentially a guest in this house, this is not my creator-owned thing.
Yeah. Right.
I have to have respect and appreciation for the work of the literally thousands of people who have contributed to this story, before I even got here, before I was a twinkle in my daddy's eye. So, I wanted to be very respectful of the media, but I do want to also make it accessible, for modern world and for new readers. Um, and so that was, like the big priority for me. I didn't have, necessarily like growing up with Flash Gordon or anything of that nature. But I know what it's like to be a kid.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
And I
true.
know what it's
Yep.
like to be a fan. And
Yep.
so those are the two major things, coupled with that respect for, being a guest in somebody else's house that I kept in mind while proceeding.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And with that, how much from the, I guess, original origin of Flash Gordon do you take while doing this new kind of reimagined version of the character?
I mean, like the story was still pretty straightforward in terms of like, okay, we've entered a spaceship, and we arrive on a mysterious planet, and then hit the ground running. And so like those, where it's like, okay, like how we got in the spaceship maybe has a little twist.
Yeah, right.
What planet we've arrived on maybe has a little twist. But, keeping it two people, like crash together, in this land of mystery and magic, seems pretty classic, seems pretty true. And so like with the multiverse, jumping back to the other question, like I wanted that ability, where it's like, okay, I'm coming in, but I'm not saying this is the definitive version. I'm not saying, and now, when I was approached for it, we hadn't sort of entered the multiverse in a plethora of pieces of pop culture, social media yet. And so that was like something that I really wanted to do in order to say, like, look, I'm not taking, the 1980 Flash Gordon from you. I'm not taking the newsreels from you. I'm not taking the black and white, like none of that. Like all of these things exist equally. And we're going to have fun with that down the line. And now it's so funny that, in the years that it took, as the product was passed between licensors and publishers, the social media or the pop culture landscape changed around us.
Yep.
So now it looks like, oh, we went into this with different intentions. But really it was just meant at the time to be like an appreciation, for the many, many, many other storytellers who contributed to it before, Bev and I joined the project.
Yeah.
Um Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So as I was reading the story, one of the things that popped out to me was that you gave Flash Gordon, you gave her amnesia of sorts, and it created this moment where she was able to rediscover things that we know well through fresh eyes. Was was there any thought of, or is there maybe for the future of making it kind of a little bit more educational, adding a little bit of like something along those lines, or was that literally just a story thing that you thought, okay, this is how we're going to go about it?
I don't think it would. Maybe I'm perceiving, the description of educational as meaning more like turn and face the camera and explain.
Maybe not that, but I mean, Mike and I also read a lot of manga, and you'll see like one we've really grown, or at least I've really grown to love recently, is Delicious in Dungeon, which is like a fantasy story, but it also is uh, it has moments in the story to describe how to cook. And it's educational of sorts, but
Yeah.
it's not like flash facts where it's and here kids is why, you know.
Don't
The
do
main
drugs.
thing that I would want them to learn from this is to find adventure all around them. Like that's the thing, like the perceiving stuff with new eyes, like it's my neighbor always apologizes, because her kids, like love to run up and down my driveway, but it's like it keeps you young, man. Like, like hearing little kids having fun, like you are so privileged to hear that sound. So it's like, oh, like leek potato soup. Oh, they have that every day at the cafeteria, and it's like maybe I try to leek potato soup and wonder what this would taste like if I'd never tasted anything else in my life. And so it's that like, ability and appreciation that like, wow, we live in a really enchanted freaking timeline, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
The things that we take for granted is just, day by day, even the things that we consider evils or, pieces of technology that don't serve us the way that they used to. It's still so phenomenal that we are privileged enough to be alive at this point in history. And so like that's the if I have to teach something, I want to teach wonder.
Yeah.
It's dope.
Love that answer.
No, that's a great approach. And on the focus on like a child reading the book, Bev, your art, I've noticed with your facial expressions, you do an amazing job with how you can tell the emotion on the characters. And I will say there are some artists that tend to not focus on that. I mean, if it's a superhero book, we're not really focused on what emotion Superman has when he's like punching something, but not all the time at least. But I think, and I've heard this before, it's very important for children to like when they see emotion or expressions on faces, they pay attention to a lot when they're not necessarily reading. Was that something you wanted to focus on? Did you dial that in a little more for this book specifically, or is that like just your style in general?
Yeah, I think that's just my style because I think I'm mainly like a character designer at heart, so I always just want the characters to like act and be really clear what they're feeling. And like pretty much every other project I work on is like very focused on emotion in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think I just have fun with that.
That's good. Yeah, and it's definitely your strong suit too, because like even the points where we're like zoomed out, you can see like, oh yeah, this person's pretty sad or something like that. It's you do that finer detail there, and I think that helps with the story for sure.
Thank you.
Yep. And I know, I mean, we don't have the colorist here, but did either of you have, like Bev, did you have some input on colors, or was that all from sorry, I'm pulling it up right now.
Oh, I did the colors.
Oh, you did the colors as well.
Yeah.
I just saw that. Yeah. So that's what, another thing I wanted to compliment was the colors, because there's not some of these big pages like with the spaceship and stuff. There's a lot of like retro wave colors where she's looking at the telescope in the start. That was all you? Was there a collaboration between both of you? Because I think the colors are really great for this book too. I think they pop in a lot of different
I defer to
pages.
Bev on all art. My art is figures. My art is penis.
That's awesome. Okay, so that was you, Bev, doing all these colors and choosing them for the panels.
Yeah, I think I really wanted each place they went to be distinct and to have a certain mood to it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, because like when we jump from like zone to zone, I'll call it, you can definitely feel that like the area where you're with all the trees and the start and in the spaceship with the blues and in space. I just think it pops, and I think children will just enjoy it even more. I mean, I'm like a kid when I'm reading it. I was like, oh, this is really cool. So like I can imagine that kids will really like it too. Um, but yeah, and I know like Chris would really like the book because there was a scene. I'm not so sure those are we can call those squirrels or if there's some sort of squirrel hybrid or something in the trees. But can we say what those are yet, Marguerite, or no?
I think in the script they were just critters.
They're just critters. Okay, okay. I know Chris is a big fan of those,
And
so
then Bev made the correct person making them squirrels. So
yeah, yeah, that was an awesome scene. And I know Chris is a huge squirrel fan, so um, and I think like you talked about you had this idea in 2019. It finally 6 years later, and we always talk a little bit behind the scenes with creators of like the headache is you're writing scripts and they get out there and then nobody ever sees these projects. Um, was that you really pushing it along, Marguerite, to finally get it, or was it kind of all happening in the background? Like
It was a mix. It was a mix. For the first 2 years, I was really fighting to keep it alive. And the world was ending around our ears.
yeah, that's true.
And
Yeah.
there was a time actually, like where they told me it was stone dead,
Hmm.
and there was a whole legal behind the scenes thing. But then it resurrected, and I'm so happy that it's here. Like
Yeah.
I spent the pandemic writing it, and those are some of the darkest, times of my life. And the story really became an escape, and like the ability to leave and to go to this other world. And it was ultimately, I love my nieces and nephews, but it was also very important for me, the
Yeah,
book
right.
saw the light of day. So.
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, I thought it was really cool with the world you built here. Quite literally, I mean, we're in Flash Gordon, so it's a sci-fi property that a lot of people know. But you crash land the ship right away, take it almost completely out of science fiction and straight into a fantasy realm. I guess how for both of you, probably Bev a little bit more, but how much fun do you have building this world and creating the different kingdoms inside of the world and different types of characters and everything that we see in the book?
Yeah, I think in terms of like sci-fi and fantasy, I'm definitely inspired by Star Wars, where I think even George Lucas has called it like a fantasy in space.
Mhm.
I think the border between those two is kind of blurry at times, at least in my interpretation. Um, so I was just trying to think of each planet, each location as um, its own kind of biome, and thinking of them each as having like their own distinct culture.
Hmm. Um, no, I thought that was really cool, and like Marguerite, like I'm not a huge Flash Gordon fan, so like when you go to these um other places and like Omnia and are these all places that are cited throughout Flash Gordon history? Like, did you have to do research on these and be like, okay, I can pick and choose pieces here and there to like throw into the story, or
Research. I'm the worst teacher's pet when it comes to, okay, now I'm going to learn. I'm going
yeah,
to read every novel in order to write one essay on this writer.
yep,
Yeah, so I did a lot of deep dive on Flash Gordon, and then yes, I pick and chose, and then I definitely like tweaked and massaged, and because I wanted to be very visually interesting, and in some cases, going back through the series, they were quite limited, to their budget, or like what the special effects of the 1930s could imagine.
right,
It's like there are critters where it's like, okay, they found themselves a couple of iguanas and they taped some little horns, to their faces. And I mean, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. You
yeah,
can look this
right,
up on YouTube.
yep,
And so it was like, all right, well, so if we, I do want to like have nods to that, but like I would also like to, bring in some stuff like, my niece's favorite animal is the axolotl, and so I was like, all right, we got to have a giant
nice,
axolotl fight.
that's amazing.
So yeah, that was super fun.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about that too. Like that's such a it is a cool part of the book, but it was kind of random to like have that specifically. But that's really cool that it's like tied to your niece's your niece. So that's really awesome. I discovered something like reading the book too because um I'm a big fan of like the He-Man cartoons. That's like what I grew up with, and reading Flash Gordon. I don't think I've ever really appreciated the mixture of sci-fi, fantasy, technology, and fantasy coming together, and that's something I always thought, oh, this is really cool. Like He-Man has it all. Like I guess Flash Gordon does too, right? As like somebody who didn't know this, you really can go like everywhere you want with the story. And that's kind of what you do here, right? It's just like a wild ride of sci-fi fantasy, and then it kind of leaves you wanting a little bit more with like oh, maybe there's something more to the story, right? So that's kind of what you played with overall.
Oh yeah, and like, just in the timeline, for the majority of human history, stories with a fantastical element, we quantify as fantasy. And you have the Industrial Revolution throughout the 1800s, and then suddenly you have the advent of, okay, the things that are magical in the world are now things that are within our grasp. We can actually build and create things that would render what we considered magic before. And
Hmm.
then you have, the advent of science fiction, moving from the middle of the 1800s forward. And the Flash Gordon, story and like, the advent of space travel in this is still very, very early into the, beginning of the 1900s. And so a lot of the concept of, the sci-fi is still very much, part of like the agriculture, or the agricultural, medieval fantasy, of like, of fantasy or literature that came before that.
Hmm.
So I definitely still wanted to have a lot of like the medieval, the heraldry and iconography, of like this champion, this space opera, the sword and the steed and the castle and the
Yep.
banner. Yep.
Yep. Okay. That's really cool. That was a great answer. And I know that from what I know of Flash Gordon, like the iconic character, he's supposed to have like he's got the sword and he has a pistol too, right? Is that like
Yeah.
the two? So we kind of see our main character acquire one of those items, or
Yeah.
maybe both, and so like as the story progresses, we might see that full like she gets like suited up as the Flash Gordon that everybody knows.
I think that, going all the way back to like the ancient Greek heroes, getting their breastplate, getting their shield, getting their greaves, like all those things are, armoring up is a big part of the
Yeah,
traditional, hero tale.
because that was like the one thing where I was like, oh, I do recognize that. Like that's a that's a that's a pretty big part of the character, like getting the weapons and stuff. So, um, I do want to ask because we kind of leave it on a cliffhanger. Is there any room for like a continuation of the story? I know there was some hiccups, for quite a few years, but is this, are you just doing this one volume, or do you have more volumes that you've kind of written out, fleshed out?
So the ultimate decision maker is the audience.
Right. Okay.
But I can at least tell you that I wrote during lockdown a great deal more than is currently being shared in the world.
Okay.
How
Okay.
about that?
Wow. All right. That's good to know.
I believe there was a second volume announced.
Oh, there was? Oh, that's news to me. I guess I should have known that. Um, because I would like to know more about this. I mean, it does leave us on a cliffhanger, and hopefully that we'll get
Oh
more. But
no,
no, it wasn't
I'm sorry.
announced.
That was the Flash Gordon Adventures book.
Oh,
There's
okay.
so much Flash Gordon stuff coming out.
Yeah. We're hitting a like an age of Flash Gordon. It's having a renaissance, right? It's coming back. So,
Yeah, and
um,
I wanted to ask too. So I've seen more and more creators going down this road of, I think both of you are known a little bit for more mainstream comics and like adult comics, if you will. I don't know the correct wording for it. And going the all ages route because of many different reasons, including expanding an audience and just telling these fun stories that don't have to deal with like continuity and everything. But as a whole, since we haven't had a ton of experience with paper cuts, how has been working with paper cuts as a whole? Like, what does that brand bring you in terms of the book and the people you're working with and all these different things?
Stephanie, our editor, has been fantastic. That is honestly, I haven't really interacted a ton with the I don't know, institution of paper cuts because, the book started in 2019, somewhere different. So that was mostly who I was working with in the development of the story.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, because we're both big fans of Mad Cave Studios and what they've been doing. Obviously, their work as Mad Cave Studios tends to be more what we're into as, American comic lovers. But I think it's interesting. I've talked to so many people about paper cuts and just how huge that division is, and nobody really realizes it
yeah,
outside of the people in the know.
yeah. Just knowing how big that audience is for all ages and stuff like that in kids' books. But this
I
comes
know
out.
anyone who's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, people don't read anymore." It's like, talk to a kid.
yeah,
Where are you
right.
getting your intel?
Yeah,
So jump on Peacock right now. You got Dogman on the movie going on. For the longest time, that
yeah,
book was one of the top selling comics of recent memory of all
yeah.
time, possibly. Like it's huge. Yeah.
And it's crazy when I go to my local bookstore, they don't have a graphic novel section, but they have like a kids graphic novel section, and I still look through it because there's some pretty awesome stories there.
Yeah, dude, and it's like, the great thing about kids is we're always going to be making more of them.
Right. Yeah.
You
Right.
know,
So yeah,
it
and
keeps you
they'll.
young. Like, the
Yep.
stuff that they love. Like every day they discover something for the first time. Like every
Hmm.
day, the whole world is magical for them. I like to
Yeah.
contribute to that.
You talk about wanting to contribute to that. Sorry to cut you off, Mike.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I always say I like to contribute to it too by buying these like all ages books. Some of them are for me. I'll be honest with you. Like I love some of these books too, but I'll buy them and give them out to kids and friends' kids or whoever. And I always say that it's like a selfish act because it's me trying to hook more kids in the comics so that when I'm retired, I have comics. Do either of you have that feeling when you're like creating a book like that, like this?
Go ahead, Bev. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Well, I mean, I just love introducing anyone to comics.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
really happy when my adult friends read comics too.
Yeah. You get them
Same.
into it.
Yeah, that's even more of a magical moment.
Yeah. Go ahead, Marguerite.
Oh yeah, like for a while there, I was having folk, a lot of educators in addition to parents, like, coming to my booth at shows and asking, like, what do we do? Like the kids don't want to read prose, like, like we're trying to get them off of comics, we want them to read like, like novels. And it's like, teach them that reading is fun. It doesn't, like that, the rest of that will take care of itself. But you need to get them, like, we're not being on the iPad as the fun activity. We're
Right.
just reading for pleasure. That is the biggest thing. Like, don't try to police them and, like, give them that, like, boulderized, like, this is for your education or your moral fortitude or whatever.
Right.
Just teach them that it's fun.
Yeah.
That is, and you will have done your job.
Yep. Yep.
And learn what they love.
Yes.
Because like I didn't care about the books they were handing me in school, but when a teacher handed me Ender's Game and was like, "You should read this," that's what made me fall in love with reading.
Yep. And for me, it was Captain Underpants because I liked the pictures. I can't read books without pictures. I mean, it's an audiobook if that's not it. Yeah, I think that's a cool approach that you do, Chris, like handing out books and getting kids hooked on comics. There's worse things, I guess, in the world. Yeah, I greatly enjoyed the book. It comes out July 1st, I believe, is when it'll be available. And I mean, Chris and I think we both enjoyed it, and it wasn't something we would normally read. But like before we wrapped up today, is there anything either of you want to say about the book that maybe like someone of our audience didn't notice about it or didn't touch on today? If either of you want to.
Just I hope people have a blast. That's
Okay.
really good. Yeah.
I think that'll be it. So, and if our listeners, our viewers, if they don't follow you both by now, they should be. But like, is there any social media you want to send them to, where they can follow you?
I've disappeared off social media and I live in my little witch cabin in the woods now.
That's awesome. I'm so jealous of you. We
I wanna
haven't
live
gotten
that
that
life.
answer. We've had like 450 interviews. I don't know, and that's not been an answer yet. But I'm so jealous of that.
No, I'm
That's
sorry
all.
that like my haunted like clock interrupted like right in the middle
Oh,
of
it's
the really hot.
amazing.
It's
I was-
noon too,
yeah.
so we're gonna get all 12 chimes anyway. So.
It's okay. That's all right. That's awesome. Bev, do you have a social
A
media?
mysterious stranger.
I'm Beverly Love on Instagram, but honestly, most of my work there is like so different from this.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
have fun if
anybody
you
wants
want.
to, yeah, go have fun. And Marguerite, if I had the choice to be stuck in a cabin with Ryan North and Chip Zdarsky, I think that would be the option rather than being on social media and talking.
They're such. I dedicated the book to them. They were such darlings, and like they were
that's
there,
awesome.
with me at the very beginning, and like when we got the news that it was published, I was with them again, and so it was great.
That's great. That's so awesome. I'm happy that it's getting
amazing.
published, and congrats that it's finally getting out there. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's everybody out there watching or listening. You can go in the show notes down below and check out those social media handles if you want to follow these creators even further. But more importantly, I will have links to the book, Flash Gordon and the Girl of Infinity. So Bev, Marguerite, thank you so much for stopping by and chatting with us for a little bit. It's been a pleasure, and best of luck with the launch of this book.
Thank y'all so
you.
much.
Thanks.